It's so bright at this time of day. I got a pillow. I got a pillow. I got a cool microphone. Cool microphone. Here he comes. Da-da-da-da. Here he comes. The drummer, the drummer. Sean Wallbridge. Sean Wallbridge, the drummer, is coming to the show. He's got a smile on his face. He's got a smile on his face and a lot of fur.
Wait, it is a lot of fur now. I can't decide. There's a lot of things on my mind about my hair at the moment, which is used to give two shits about my hair before, and I still don't. But
Hello?
hey, what do you think? Should I grow it wider? I feel like
Yeah.
it's too narrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
AI keeps drawing it wider too, so I feel like it's trying to encourage me. So I'm kind of growing the sides with the intent that once it gets long enough, I can kind of go wider.
Got
I
it.
don't know. I mean, yeah, it's just I think it's a little too narrow, and it gets wispy, and because I'm constantly bleaching it, not constantly, once a month I bleach it. It's just really like it doesn't grow longer. I don't have to trim the top. It's dead by the time it reaches this height, so it's perfect. There's no product. I just blow dry it, so it's super soft.
No,
But
I think we need to stop right there. I don't do anything to it except blow dry it.
that's right. I'm so natural.
Hey,
Yeah.
wait, hold on. I realize I might have made myself show self view. Okay. Do you want to do more riffing or you want to dive in?
Do I want to do Merv Griffin or do I want to dive in? What did you say?
More riffing or
Oh,
do you want to dive in?
uh, I'm good with whatever. I'm basically going to a cool
Mm.
blues show tonight in 2.5 hours, so I'm already vibing. And I played some amazing pickleball today.
Tell me
And
about it. Tell me about your pickleball.
well, because it's always entertaining. Like it's a when he makes fun of me because I keep coming home going like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm getting better and better, and it's becoming easier and more fun. And I surprise myself at my own athleticism, which like I feel like that. How many 52-year-olds are going like? I feel like I'm improving, not
Hmm.
losing a step, right? So that's going on, and then I just it has been such a fertile ground for get like taking my solar plexus out for a spin because
Mm.
someone who's my partner and we're encouraging each other 10 minutes later because we're always shifting people around. Now they're the opponent. They're trying to kill me. I'm watching them
Ah.
with the other partner. Or sometimes they'll be like, why didn't you make that kind of shot when I was your partner? Like it becomes like personal. Like it's just like they just missed the ball. So and then today, like watching these two ladies go at it, like they were both pissed off. They were both wrong. They were both sure they were right. And I absolutely recognize that in the past, I somehow would have gotten myself involved, even
Mm.
if it was taking a side quietly or somehow placing myself in the middle to diffuse it. And I just instead just watched it, and I just thought like the two of them just need to blow off some steam.
Mm.
And in my head, it was like if I like they're both. When you're kind of like you're having an argument with someone else in public and everyone wants to save face or do damage control. So they're all like this little side comments like, can you believe her? And so there's all that going on, right? And I just found myself really enjoying not participating. It felt really uncomfortable,
Mm.
but I was familiar with that. No one asked me to help. So I just did not get involved.
Mm.
But I was prepared though, like if either of them wanted to say, like, can you believe what she'd be like? I think I would have honestly said, honestly, both of you are kind of behaving like dicks, and then kind of killed the vibe for the rest of us for 20 minutes. So that's what
Right. That's
so
what? I cut you off. What?
that's what I actually think.
Hmm.
And yeah. So pickleball. Very, very I love it. It's like it's where I do all my science these days.
Mm.
My
Mm.
social science.
Nice.
Mhm.
Nice. Well, I want to intro us a little bit. Like I like kind of just diving in and seeing where it goes. And for people who are new to these faces, who are you?
Who am I? My name is Sean Wallbridge. My full name is Sean David James Wallbridge. James, because it's always been in the family name. Uh, and David, because my parents couldn't decide between Sean or David. So they chose both and put Sean first. And I think I'm glad about that because it was a slightly more rare name.
Mm,
And despite it being torturous, everyone's spelling it wrong or mispronouncing it. it Today it feels useful somehow, like it
mm,
stands out than a John or a David at this point.
got
Where
it.
yeah, I actually kind of like my name now.
Mm.
Yeah. What else do you want to know? Where am I from?
Sure. Where are you situated in the world?
Right now I'm in Saanich, BC, so Vancouver Island. Basically, we'd call this Victoria or Greater Victoria. Um, but yeah, I grew up in Ontario. Was born in North York, which is now amalgamated into Toronto. And I tell you that only because, yeah, at least in design terms, there's no North York when you enter stuff anymore. So I have to put Toronto.
Oh, I see.
But I had a chat with Eleanor the other day, and I keep meaning I got to go get the address of the hospital
Mm,
because she's like, if we have the latitude and longitude, then I can get even more precise data, and I like the data. So then I need to actually talk to my mom and be like, was I in the northeast corner of the building? Is that where you know what I mean? So I'll see how precise I can get.
gotcha.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, I just generally what I'm kind of holding as a theme for our conversation today is to be able to ask you questions, and dig in a little bit more for my own interest, and I think potentially those who find themselves here watching, how it was that you and Dr. Eleanor found your coming together. So before we go there, I just love you to talk about your podcast or your YouTube Village. YouTube Village, that's new.
That's that's funny because that's kind of how I think of it. And I know I'm going against the grain, and I'm not. I think were you and I talking about that? I feel like we talked about that a couple of days ago. Just
Yeah, because I'm pushing like, hey, why not do it? And you're like, I'm not doing the normal shit. Back off.
yeah,
Kindly.
it's like a stubbornness. So it may not be serving me. There's a thousand tips for how to do YouTube thumbnails or how to position a video or be niche and be narrow and target your market. And I just love the idea of just shining around, and it's like, fuck it, it's my channel. I'm just gonna do what I want.
Mhm.
I don't have a lot of followers, so maybe maybe that's why. And I also don't put the whole like and subscribe. Like I find that all really kind of annoying and
Mm.
frustrating at this point. So because I would if I wanted to. I don't subscribe to any newsletters by email, despite opting out and still being put on them all the time.
Mm.
Because I want to get my information when I need it,
Mm.
which I've come to realize is exactly how I learn, and it's not how necessarily others learn. And I used to be ashamed of that, and now it's like, no, I like when I need the information, I'm gonna go find it.
Mm.
Yeah. And that's helped a lot. I don't know if I told you this, but I probably spent when I had the funds like 20 grand on human design information, signing up for
Mm.
this 5 course, signing up for this, signing for that, and then the shame of not actually like doing even 10% of it,
Mm.
and then talking to some folks and being like, oh, hang on a second, that's actually feels kind of correct for me. Like I'm a nibbler, and if it's tasty, I'll keep going.
Mm.
And I have noticed, partly because I let go of worrying about finishing anything anywhere, yeah, that I still own the content and I can go get it. So I
Mhm.
just keep a list of what I have access to.
Mm.
So far, I haven't bought a course twice, which is good. So, yeah, I don't know how I got on that tangent other than that's been it's interesting to hear myself say it out loud, because I know that I went through that and used to feel like I never finished anything, and now I'm starting to recognize that it's actually part of my flow. So it's hearing myself going, it's like, oh, okay, you've landed that. Much like, you know, if you teach someone something, then you actually understand it. Just I'm realizing lately I need to, like, my conversations with you, I've said this, I'm sure, before, like, it's really, really helpful just to talk something through.
Totally.
Like, all I needed to do, because I'm trying to like land the plane, and I just needed you to either ask some questions or echo it back to me and be like, oh, that's not quite what I meant, but it's the nuance or tweak I needed. Right? So, yeah.
Yeah, so hearing just Shawning Around, which I think is a brilliant. I love the titles that you come up with for your
Want to know how that came to be?
uh, uh, sure, but mostly where I was headed is like what are you aiming for with your channel beyond doing what you want without fitting a niche or what the world is maybe asking?
That's a good question. What am I aiming for? Uh, hmm. That is a really good question. I don't know if I've actually thought about that in that regards. I mean, I view YouTube as a place to store stuff that I think is useful. I think even you asked me the other day, like, what was Brain Litter? So Brain Litter was my blog, right? Well, that's because like 25 years ago, as an IT tech guy, I was solving these problems that other people hadn't documented. So I was like, hey, if you get the 0x76925A error, it could be this, right? And I used to get thanks from people all the time from all over the world, saying like, thanks for sharing this. Or I'd be looking up an error and read my own blog post and not remember writing it, but be like, oh, that was me, because I could sense my sense of humor in it somewhere, right? Like I always had something. So like, it was Brain Litter was like keeping track of the shit that falls out of my head. So I think I view YouTube kind of the same way. Like, I want to store things there that I think I want to hold on to or find again. Or it's lately I'm just realizing that I seem to be very good at stumbling across things that are useful, and if I share it with others, people benefit, it seems. So yeah, others benefit. I'm not monetizing anything. So, but I don't know. It's a space to put and share content. And I'm a big YouTube fan these days. I don't binge Netflix. I don't watch TV because I like to learn. And I think what I value in YouTube and why I like YouTube Shorts over, say, TikTok, is that there's all sorts of people sharing their experiences, and that's the only way we're going to find out what's truth out there. Because for the most part, we're getting pumped to us what our experience should be. And I would rather have someone say, this is what I experienced, and have, you could see 800 people chime in and comment, you know what I mean? Like, there's social proof with video content on YouTube. And my comment about TikTok and Shorts is TikTok doesn't have any long form content that I can tell. It's just an endless stream of trying to get my attention. YouTube Shorts, the way I view it, is here's a preview, a snack, but here's the longer, this is where if it catches your attention, maybe you'll tune into it. So I don't know if that answered your question, but can I tell you how just Shutting Around came to be though?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't come up with it. Well, I mean, I came up with putting my own name in it, but so I had a bunch of fellows that I knew through a men's retreat. So it was a big weekend where we did MDMA and acid and hugged each other and spooned each other, and it was a big deal.
Yeah.
4 or 5 of those guys from that group went up island, and they were on a beach one day, and they were all on acid, and just on this remote beach, and a bear just walked out of nowhere and just grabbed like a salmon out of the water and just started like eating the salmon. And all the guys are like completely high, but the bear was so disinterested, and they're like, oh, he's just bearing around. And so that turned into just bearing around, and then another friend, Gabriel, there said he was just gaping around, and I was like, huh, just showing around, and then that's where that was born. So completely unoriginal, but what I like about it is, yeah, it's just my channel. You know, I'd rather I want my channel. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So the next question that I wanted to ask before maybe shifting to, the Dr. Eleanor theme is, yeah, I noticed on your channel that there's, when the term village came to mind, it's kind of like there's different hubs that I experience. And so I was curious if you want to kind of like identify or lay those out as they exist now.
Yeah, well, in YouTube terms, I guess they're called playlists,
Mm-hmm.
like groupings of videos. So I have a playlist for But Wait, There's More with Dr. Eleanor, which is obviously like what we're probably going to talk about today, and our mutual friend. And that's evolved into now we use Restream and publish to her channel and mine. So it's the same content, but arguably two different audiences. So that's one playlist. I think we've done 16 of them or something now. So like time's flown. It went from like just, hey, here's an idea, I want to try it, to like it's what we do. And every week it's like, oh shit, I gotta plan that. So due diligence is probably the main vehicle. So to me, due diligence it was a typo. So I was doing due diligence.
Oh, wow.
Another business owner, we were talking about merging two companies. We are going to do our due diligence, and it was a typo. And I was like, that's cool. And it aligned with everything I had been about 2.5 years ago and still am, which is just like 1% improvement every day. So like there's this quote by Emile Coué that I've always loved called every day in every way I'm getting better and better. And that was always planted as a mantra inside these quantum jumping hypnosis meditations from Bert Goldman. Anyways, he planted a seed that is not an earbug that hasn't left. So due diligence at its heart is I want to speak to people about things that interest me, and learn more and hope that others benefit from that conversation. I would say 90% of it is human design, but that's not really been the intent. It's just been obviously where my focus has been for the most part. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't be surprised if I branch out back to like hypnosis and all sorts of other stuff pretty soon. So the design thing is a lot. So
yeah. Well, you had the heart math on recently with Raphael.
Yeah, for sure. Which I'm fascinated by. Like it's something else. And I've been trying to meet with some Reiki people and just get a sense of like, when you do absentee or remote Reiki, like I'm still coming to grips that it's a thing and that it works. And I just know. But
you want your proof.
Well, yeah, an old me would have been like, fuck off. So it's, I think those conversations need to happen where just talk about like what it feels like and what you're sensing, what your intention is, and and being open to receive, and then it works. So it's a conscious mindset, vibrational thing. So, which is again like people talking about on YouTube and other people hearing it going like, oh yeah, maybe I'll open myself up to at least trying it. So yeah. So
well, and that pings the next question for me. Like I've heard you talk on your channel as well as, in our conversations about Fünketown. And I wondered if you wanted to kind of give more context or kind of help explain what happens at Fünketown.
Well, and Fünketown was another thing that wasn't intentional. I'm in one of the rooms here. So this was a commercial space that we bought in 2017 with the intent of providing an office for software developers through an company called Regroup. And that all went to shit, and it kind of what led me to plant medicine and human design, because it was a dismantling of my life through someone I trusted. But I ended up with this amazing space and somehow couldn't let it go. I mean, it would have been easier looking back. It would have been less financially stressful looking back, but I couldn't let it go. So then we reimagined it a year and a half ago, I guess. And even that got off to a really rocky start with another person that ended up not being a fit. So I learned how to play well with others. Yeah, so Fünketown is, I call it a place of curiosity where we want to leave people better than we found them. So, in modern or marketing terms, that means it's kind of like a yoga wellness studio, but we facilitate breath work. We have sound bowls here, crystal and Tibetan. I've got 150 tuning forks. Like it's my little lab slash a place for people to host events. We've had mediums through, we've had magicians here. I definitely would love to see it being kind of like a hub for energy maps. And actually, I'll just say that, like, I was talking to Naomi, and we're just like, even the words human design isn't rolling off the tongue anymore, because whose version of human design? Whom energy, and an energy map, whether it's Eleanor's or someone else's, is a useful tool. So I think I'd love this to be a place where it's in all that we do. If you come in and you're going to attend, and this isn't happening yet, but I could see it happening, is coming in for a grief workshop or a meditation class or a sound thing, but also being like, have you ever thought about looking at your genetic trauma in your design during this thing? Inform that session. Or what are your fears? Or, looking. So to me, that's really interesting and exciting. And I'm noticing that there's interest around me picking up. So getting some support there now, which is good. So yeah, it's basically a commercial space that we own, that we want to have people come through to get reconnected themselves and with their community. And honestly, at the end of the day, and I've said this to Wendy a bunch of times, like, I would just like to walk in every day like Norm from Cheers. So if it's a place where everyone's happy to see you, and it goes Norm or Sean, and I just make crack some joke and then go disappear into my office, right? I think I've actually built that here. So it's not super busy yet, but if you build it, they'll come. So
yeah,
that's kind of what.
Yeah, the next thread that I know I keep referencing, that we'll talk about you and Dr. Eleanor's convergence. And I was curious, knowing that we could probably have a whole episode on this topic, but I'm curious if you feel a yes to speak to your Chiron return and kind of like they're not cliff notes in Canada. What are they called?
We've talked about this before, right?
Yeah.
We called them Cole's notes, but it was because Cole's, it was like do you ever have a Grandin toy? Staples. So it was like Cole's was like a mini Staples, like back when there wasn't superstores. So it was your stationery store. So Cole's was, I'm sure that was a store at one point, and Cole's notes were, algebra in 60 pages, or that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
Actually, I don't think I've ever used Cole's notes, but I certainly was aware of them. So, and I referenced them a lot for someone that never actually used them.
And I don't mean to be of a disservice to that conversation. I just imagine it could be a really full conversation.
What was the conversation again?
Your Chiron return.
Oh, my Chiron return. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's why I'm here. It's why I'm still here. So my Chiron return, because I've looked on, like, just even timing wise, was like within 2 weeks of when I went up island for a shamanic experience, that in the same weekend, I've said this enough times that people probably tired of hearing me say it if they've ever listened to me, but I never smoked a cigarette in my life. I never smoked a joint once and got nothing from it, because I didn't know how to inhale. So just no effect. And And then all of a sudden on that weekend, I'm doing clinical grade MDMA on the Friday, journaling, which I'd never done before, heroic dose of mushrooms on the Saturday, some ecstatic dance. There was a biomat, and then I got introduced to human design. Like that was a big weekend. And I went there with sleep apnea and left there never using the machine again because I felt my heart on my chest like expand, like it blew open. And it was it would open my eyes to the power of mind over body. But yeah, I got introduced to that metaphysical book that weekend too. And actually, I think I got introduced to my car buffer then. You've probably seen where I use that. So that was all the same weekend. But in the context, they weren't using the car buffer all over their body. It was just for tired knees. And just being, and if we do the profile 3-5 thing, I was just like, cool, where else can I use this thing? That's what happened. Like, that's really good on the bottom of my feet and on my back. And so it's become part of my regimen, actually. So anyways, all that happened that weekend. And that was within 2 weeks of the date of my Chiron return.
Yeah.
I went there. My soul took me to that place because I can remember all the steps leading up to it, the conversations where I was standing, and I don't remember many events like that, to be honest. But I also went there I didn't think I was going there for me. Like I was going there because I was worried about someone else, and I was hoping they would explore plant medicine because I had heard so many things about trauma and PTSD that I went there making sure it was safe for this person. That's what I thought. I since realized, like, no, I was going there for me, but I wasn't, you know what I mean? Like my soul needed to go there, but my mind thought I was doing it for somebody else. So.
It sounds in my mind, and I don't mean to minimize anything, but like, when somebody says I'm asking for a friend. Yeah.
Although I would have argued 7 ways to Sunday, is that a phrase? At the time that was not what was going on. But on hindsight, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And you've talked before about your physicality changing dramatically. I was curious which came first, this weekend or the changing your physicality?
No, the physicality changed first, and it's what at the time you could on the surface look like a really positive thing, but it's actually what dismantled my whole life. So, I was always where do I want to start? I was always a husky kid. And by the way, in the 70s and 80s, when grandparents and moms and dads call their kids husky, we know you mean fat. So it's actually like really, really harmful.
Yep.
So I was huskied for 20 years. While always encouraged to, eat your sister's plate because you're a growing boy. So,
mixed
right?
messages.
Right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No ill intent. It's just I didn't know any better or didn't stand up for myself. I just didn't know any better. So husky kid, always battling my weight. So by the time 2017 rolled around, I was 309 pounds. So really hefty. I had already 2 years before gone to my doctor saying, I've tried everything, like literally, I mean, looking back, I tried everything a little bit. But I tried everything. And so I went to my doctor like 2 years before, like it was 2015, said, I really think I need to consider, surgery. Like I need help. She's like, oh, no, you don't want to do that. And so I was sleep apnea, I was high blood pressure, but there's no other risks. Well, 2 years later, I now am pre-diabetic, and the doctor's like, have you ever considered, stomach surgery? I'm like, dude, I was here talking to you 2 years ago. And she's like, well, we've changed our view on this. I'm like, oh, great. So, lost years of my life because you weren't ready. And that was one of those moments where I was like, fuck this. I'm going to take my hand in my, so once my doctor suggested it, I was on it. And what we'll tell you, like if I'm on something, it's full focus. So I went from like, which path, So gastric bypass was a very old way of doing things. not good for you. It cuts you off from your stomach. You can't process minerals. Like you're just cut off from the biology of the rest of your body. So it's not good. And then there was right around that time, lap band was very common and I wouldn't say popular. I think it was already moving away, but the whole idea that you create they put like a belt around your stomach and you go for adjustments every 6 months. And it basically ties you off from your stomach without being invasive surgery. I think it's now like nobody does it anymore because it's just not proven to be effective at all. And who wants to keep going back every 6 months to so what I had, and which I'm assuming is still kind of a common one, is called VSG or vertical sleeve gastro something. And they cut away like 60 to 80% of your stomach.
Oh, wow.
So I was looking at them like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So I looked into it, and in Canada, now that my doctor was endorsing it for me, I was now on a 3-year waiting list. So I was like, I'm not waiting 3 years for this. I could be dead next week, the way I felt. Then I looked into private. It was going to be $25,000 in Toronto. And the people there didn't give a shit. They didn't have any kind of like post support, integration. It was just like, yep, send a deposit here and you'll be on the list. It just felt impersonal.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, okay. So I started looking around for like medical tour, or what do they call medical tourism. And I took a leap. So it was, where did I go? Puerto Vallarta. And so I found a Facebook group for the doctor. I got to know I didn't get to know the doctor, but I got a sense of the people sharing their stories and their success. And within 6 weeks, I was, on a plane to Puerto Vallarta, and I think it was $4,000, and then hotel, and got to go hang out on the beach. And it was the best medical experience I've ever experienced, despite everyone, the local VHA organization here telling me, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. You can't trust the people over there, all that bullshit. Meanwhile, the system here is complete horseshit. But anyways, doesn't matter who. I took a ringer and went, and my wife came with me, which I remember was very last minute that she was coming, and she was very stressed. The whole thing was super stressful. I sent an email to myself, like sort of my last, like if I don't make it, right? Like it would be in my inbox for someone else to see.
Wow.
And so the morning, once I woke up alive, I just deleted it. So I don't remember what I wrote, but it was one of those, like it was terrifying. So you go under and they're ripping you apart. And at the time, I remember Wendy being super stressed when I came out because it was supposed to be a 2-hour operation. And it was like 4.5. And he commented later, like my blood vessels were particularly thick, or, I don't know what that meant. So anyways, I'm giving you a lot of detail, except what I learned from that is that my stomach was apparently 1.5 times the size of a normal stomach. And from what I understand from the surgeon, it wasn't misused. It wasn't stretched. It was just that big. And I also then learned from him that your stomach is made of something called ghrelin. And ghrelin is what gives you hunger. I had 150% of the hunger pings and the space to put the food away.
Right.
The thing is, like, I was never a lazy person, but I could eat, and I never knew what full was. So that get stomach surgery, and now even today, more than 7 years later, so I've replaced every cell in my body. If you go with the whole 7-year cell thing since that time frame, I still like bite into a cheeseburger, and by the third bite, like I'm just like a shark. I'm ravenous. But if I take a fourth bite, it's coming out through my nose because the stomach is like the size of a banana. So.
I see.
Yeah. So I lost a bunch of weight, 120 pounds, I guess, over a year and a half. And that was quite an adventure. People not recognizing me. The confidence that comes with feeling good in your skin and new clothes.
Yeah.
But also how it made Wendy feel, because all of a sudden I was getting attention from people that I never used to get. Right? Like all optics change, right? So it was just uncomfortable for everyone involved. But as well, my best friend at the time, I kind of alluded to the sociopath in my life that ran my other business into the ground. He was I realized my fat buddy. So here I was, wait in front of him. He was running the business that I started. He was trying to live up to the bar that I set. And I mean, when I was on, uh, it's funny, but I notice people try to compete with me all the time now. Like I can actually feel it and sense it,
Hmm.
whether it's trying to match my drinking way back when, or they were trying to match my uh, uh, I wouldn't say work ethic, but my ability to produce. So this guy was, I think, trying to do that, like, and thought he could, and I thought he could. I thought he was brilliant. He was younger than me, so it was like, I could finally like take care of my body. But yeah, we were talking about Fünketown. So then we were building this space. So basically, like in 2017, 2018, I lost 109 pounds, lost my best friend who ran my business into the ground, built a commercial space, got in over my head. It was a really hard year. And then when your stomach is 20% the size of it used to be, and you're dealing with stuff with alcohol, and
Oh, yeah.
your body, like I knew how to drink, my body didn't know how to process it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I absolutely became an alcoholic for a while. And then, so I was still trying to recover from this guy ripped me off, all of that. And then I was just starting to get on my feet, and then COVID came.
Mm.
Just learned another life lesson, which is everybody else was laying everybody off, and I kept everybody
Ah,
and paid
ah.
them my savings. And then the second they got a raise, they gave a week's notice, like people that
Oh,
I
wow.
really, really took care of. And that happened with nine different people. So then I started taking that personally. And
Wow.
that led me to what the fuck? So, which is ultimately, I think, how I found the plant medicine thing was part of it. And then human design, I was thinking about it earlier today, but I found human design initially, and I've changed my tune since, but I was trying to understand what was wrong with me and everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I found human design. I'm
Yeah.
now shifting to what can be empowered about me, but that's been the last 6 months, like a real
Yeah.
shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an intense experience. And so,
That was a 10th.
what's
I'm giving you
that?
the I'm giving you the highlights. So
Well, because at least as I'm hearing it, I'm not tracking the exact data points of the timeline. I don't know that I need to, but it feels like the precursor to the Chiron, right? Like it was close to the Chiron date, like within 2 years. Is that right? Or longer?
well, and back to your question, because I had a reading from Lavina Archer's a Chiron reading,
Mm,
what really connected the dots for me at the time. And I noticed listening to people talking about Chiron, there was like a pattern. Like your Chiron return is roughly your midlife crisis, 49 to 51, and that something happens to you around 44 to 46. So like 5 to 6 years before, there's some sort of like event that leads to your Chiron. And
mm,
so I have reverse engineered and been like, yep. Like it couldn't be,
yeah.
those are two huge moments in my life.
Mm,
And you could, with a dartboard on the, almost like within 2 weeks.
yeah.
It's about 2 weeks, but that's pretty significant. Like
Hmm.
it was that kind of weekend. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've talked about this, off air, but my Uranus opposition was what you spoke to.
mm,
Um, so anyway, just how I've experienced working with clients or hearing friends talk about their different astrological cycles, it feels like all of them can be the rug pulled out from underneath you. It's a matter of, you know,
well,
what.
and I'm ignorant to Uranus return and Saturn return because I wasn't aware it was a thing. So for
Mm,
me, my wake up was this Chiron thing.
mhm.
Um, so when people talk about these things, I'd have to really think about, I'd have to look on the dates, and then maybe
Right.
I'd get, so I don't know, I'm not even sure what the theme of Chiron is, but I'll tell you what I learned for me,
Mm,
which was after having this Chiron return reading from Lovina, she kept talking about Chiron and the wounded healer, and it was this half man, half horse. He's trying to pull this poison
mm,
arrow at his hip, and my 5-year-old brain was like, yeah, I've always had issues with my right hip. Like I like literally was just like, that makes sense to me. I want to pull this fucking arrow out. What is the deal? And then I started looking into, I was doing all my somatic stuff with metaphysical and cannabis and exploring that. And then, and I discovered an article from Russia on genetic trauma, which is
Mm-hmm.
your sign Mars line number. So like 2.5 years ago, there really wasn't a lot out there. There's a lot more now. Like people are commenting on it. It's in nutrient design. I haven't actually talked to Eleanor about whether that's something that she's explored. But that was huge for me because my genetic trauma was shame. Shame is the lowest vibration. I found myself drawn to everything to do with vibration anyway. I was already in that 369 Tesla vibration frequency, David Hawkins, like I was already nibbling around there. I was like, I don't want to have the lowest frequency of shame. Like that's like lower, there's anger. It was like if murder was a frequency, it seemed to be higher than shame. Shame was just like so bad. And for some reason I knew what that meant. It felt. So I found myself exploring my genetic trauma, then my mother's, my kids, my wife. And that alone, I think, is like the best pillow talk for any relationship. It's just talking about each other's genetic trauma because you'll find out a lot really quickly. Like mine's shame. I'm going to try to shame you in order to avoid feeling shame. If your trauma is guilt, you're going to try to guilt me in order to avoid feeling guilt. I live in a house with 3 people with guilt motivation. It's almost like they've got a chat room and they're like, none of us want to empty the dishwasher. We'll just like, it's almost like energetically, all 3 guilt vehicles come together and go like, we'll just guilt dad into emptying the dishwasher. Well, dad doesn't use any fucking dishes. Dad is the kind of guy that uses a paper towel and makes a PBJ and wipes his hands on his pants. Like I don't use dishes and I'm emptying the dishwasher all the time. And it's because they somehow energetically attacked me. And so that was like super interesting because it was just right there. It was just a vibrational mismatch. And then it was just a matter of playing with that. So yeah. So anyways, I came to believe and agree, or I'm agreeing with myself. I came to believe that Chiron Return is an opportunity to turn off the kill program of the Matrix. Like basically, if you figure out your genetic trauma and kind of break the chain potentially, then maybe I'll be less inclined to get prostate cancer or the other things that the Matrix goes, this soul's not getting it, turn on the exit programs. That's quite literally how I view myself lately as a piece of technology.
You've said that.
Right? Like that makes sense to me. And then my friend Timothy Bacon was saying, because if genetic trauma is design your line number and design Mars, he made a comment that the fountain of youth is your personality Mars. Now I've yet to still grill him for what he meant by that, but like to me it's like if you're gonna like swing the pendulum, like one is about living, shutting down the programs, and one's about Benjamin buttoning. It should be the same pendulum, right? So
because Uranus opposition was so huge for me, I was like, all right, there's another big cycle coming. I want to understand, what Chiron experience may or could or involves. And similar to how I'm hearing you speak about it, what I was hearing is like, it's a 50-year cycle generally where Chiron moves in relationship to when you first, were out of the womb. And for me, growing up or, 0 to before Chiron, it was abandonment story. And it was all of my personal development around abandonment. And it was something like maybe this is how you spoke about it. I'm not tracking it fully to re-say it, but it was like the plug was pulled from that storyline. It just wasn't as intense. And I don't feel solid about tracking. Is that because of the work I had done? Is that in combination of the work being done plus Chiron pulling the plug? So that was something that I tracked, that I'm less maybe projecting the abandonment story into scenarios,
Hmm.
or
And
less
you're talking about your Uranus return as far as context?
no, Chiron return.
Oh, Chiron. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just leading up to the reason why I was started thinking about Chiron was because Uranus was just so strong.
Yeah, well, and I guess the reason I'm asking is that to me, it seems the theme of Chiron is, it's your last chance to get your shit together.
Mm.
I don't know what the theme of the Uranus is because I've never actually
Hmm.
looked at the dates and so what, like, is there a theme? Like, what are we supposed to take away from that, or what does one experience during that? Because I'll have to look up later the time frame too. I'm sure everybody will be like, oh fuck, it was that, right?
Yeah.
But
I mean, I could pull up your chart, but honestly, I don't know that I can speak about it to the degree that maybe somebody like the person you had your first reading with. It's
mm,
more when I think of Saturn return, when I think of Uranus opposition or Chiron, and then you have a second Saturn return, it's the whatever is in the structure of somebody's life, um, how they're experiencing life, if there's a part that needs to shift so the fullest potential of that person can be experienced,
mm,
the timeline of those cycles is gonna unravel that or shake it up. Because then you also, at least if we're talking in traditional human design, then there's also a different incarnation cross. So we're
mm,
born with the incarnation cross, and then Saturn, we have an incarnation cross that just kind of gets put in the bag, and then we carry it with us. So kind of like when you and I were talking about the 2343, because you and I spend these conversations together, and then also because it was in the transit, you've been able to like pick up what that energy is about. So that's now in your bag. So
mm,
similar with the Saturn return and whatever the incarnation cross would have been there. Same with the profile, again, referring to traditional human design. It's like those get layered in and become more tools to reference from. So for my
mm,
Uranus opposition, oh, I need to look it up, but I think it was Cross of the Four Ways. So I find that interesting. And it was also, again, from traditional human design, it was the first time that when my Uranus opposition was happening, where I had a defined ego.
mm.
So that was another layer of, anyway. So there's all these different variables that come in, and when these cycles come through, it's like a big of energy that you can ride with or be ridden
Yeah,
by.
but it's all fascinating, and the more we play with it and talk about it. So, like, I haven't thought about this in 8 months, partly because I talked to Eleanor, and she's not a fan of profile, right? But one of the things that I kept latching onto and asking everyone I could meet was like, you'd show your body graph during your Chiron return, and I was a 2-4 as far as what it showed for the profile.
Yep.
And I talk to people, I'm like, it's got no meaning. And if I said it to Eleanor, she'd be like, profile, like, so,
Yeah.
uh, but I've been herming like crazy. And my connections are, like, if it's a costume you're wearing or if there's a theme to it, I my 3-5, I kind of felt like I taken on this 2-4 thing. Now, is it because I'm thinking about it and I can just talk myself into it and see the patterns? Yes, there's that as well. But for me, it was kind of exciting. It was like, oh, good, I've earned this. And so
Mm,
then I think if anything, it kind of made me lean into, well, the more I lean into, especially the design
mm,
side,
mm,
again, pre Eleanor, like if the conscious side, the personality side is the black on the body graph, those are the roads that you travel. And so the red are tunnels, you have to get into the tunnel to see the road. Whoever said that to me or wherever I heard that, all of a sudden I was like, well, then that's where I got to focus
mm,
because the roads have been traveled, and I'm worn out from those roads. So I just really started focusing on that, and you start drilling in, and then all of a sudden, synchronicities start happening, and
mhm.
how I got on that. Then, yeah, even taking that profile out for a spin and just being like, maybe this is the thing, right? And
Mhm.
everyone told me, no, it's not a thing. But I was also told 2 years ago when I was investigating the genetic trauma, like, oh, that's horse shit. Don't
Yep.
ignore it. And the article I found was from it was a .ru domain name. It was a Russian, it wasn't. I was like, I don't know, it resonates for me. And when I talk to people, their eyes open and like, I'm speaking, all of a sudden I'm like, I'm in,
Yeah.
there's this Death Star Millennium Falcon, like they're just like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all fun.
Yeah. Well, this feels like a good place to shift our conversation then to how did you come into a knowing about Dr. Eleanor? Because it's interesting. I was having a conversation with her earlier and she told me her version of it. And I was like, well, that's interesting because I was kind of waiting for you to walk me through it because I was building up the story in my mind. So anyway, that just feels interesting.
Yeah, can I'm just gonna go fill up my scotch, partly because this feels like one of those moments where I need to be sitting in a big leather recliner
Okay.
and with a cravat and a pipe and just feeling it like, but also because like my conversation with Eleanor yesterday, we got talking about journaling and I've been fighting it but she just talks about it so beautifully that like all I could think about today is like enjoying the moment.
Mm,
She's someone like she uses moleskin journals and silky paper and a fountain pen and and just like very intentional how she
hmm
journals. Well, I'm
hmm
like, hey, I wrote something in here finally. So can I have
Yeah.
like two?
Yeah,
Okay,
it would help me too. So yeah, I'll
okay,
just pause this.
break and then
No, I was imagining you were gonna have like you were gonna have a pipe and you were gonna put on an ascot and do all of that
well,
for the fire chat version of
I
the conversation.
I actually bought an ascot and a pipe, and I don't know where it is, but I did buy it a year ago because you could buy it as like a little kit on Amazon. I just thought the one time I want to do it, but I don't know where it is.
It's a fun
Maybe
idea.
I'll dig it out. Hmm. So what's your question? Your question was how I met Eleanor?
Yeah, like how was it that you came into connection with her and then basically the start of her on your show
Yeah. Um
all
we have to
those
look at
years
the time
ago.
frame. What's that?
All those years ago.
Well,
I was making
like
it cinematic.
like I don't know the time frame. It's like time has stopped since I met Eleanor. Like it's like I was already kind of playing with not viewing weeks as Monday through Friday anyways.
Mm.
Outside of Eleanor stuff, I was already playing with the idea of a line 1 day or a line 2 day, like playing with that energy. And that's been an interesting exercise. But around the same time, I met Eleanor and it's really shifted how I do a lot of things. So I don't remember when the time frame is, but I want to say it's been 8 or 9 months. I don't think it's been a year, but it could have been. Um, and my memory is I found her one night, probably while I was, sativa edibles, doing my, following my nose thing. And I remember, and you know what, I think at the time it had something to do with the body graph and copyrights and that whole case that was in Italy and,
Mm.
Chaitan's book. And my memory is that's why I was looking for legitimacy, I think, of design. And then I remember stumbling across her website, and the website that I saw at the time felt dated. It was like it'd been there a long time. The content was good, but it had, I'm a techie, so I'm like, okay, it's not responsive. It's not this is not just brand new. Because almost most of the stuff in design, it's been the last 3 years. It's just this giant marketing oversaturation and people arguing with each other about who's correct. So it's enough to make me crazy. But all of a sudden there was her. And my memory is I saw it one night and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I should look into that. Probably bookmarked it in my Trello and then forgot about it.
Mm.
And then I think it was like 3 weeks later, it's like, there she is again. I was like, okay, I really am starting to listen to if something appears twice,
Mm.
it's because I can be distracted about everything. someone coughs, like, oh, you okay? Like, I've had to like actually turn that off even acoustically. Like if they cough a second time and they're suddenly struggling, that's when I might. Anyways, the whole thing. So she appeared on my radar again, and I reached out to her. This is, and my memory's sketchy on this, but I reached out to her, um, and said I'd love to have a chat with you. And her response was something like, "That's really interesting. Someone said they really enjoy your videos. I'd like to meet with you too."
Hmm.
But when I met with her, she kept calling me Sam. She had the wrong birth info, and I don't think I was the person she was thinking of. So I think it was like a mistake that she met me, or and like she makes time for everybody, but
Hmm.
I don't think I was who she thought I was. And we had a chat, and it was profound, and it was the kind of thing like where she looks at your chart and says a couple of things, and you could just feel like she's pressing buttons, like ding, 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 ding. And I think during that time frame too, the funny thing is I gotta go check it out, but I'm pretty sure I actually paid for a full reading with her.
Mm-hmm.
And but she was having trouble with the software or something, so it ended up being like 20 minutes. And then she's like, well, buy a reading from me. And I was like, okay. And then I realized later, no, I just paid $500 for that reading. So anyways, the whole thing was just like it was the kind of start where it might not have been the best start, but there was something so yeah, I don't even remember what happened next, but we just started connecting a couple times. Yep. Oh, pause.
Please. It I'm curious if what you found about her, you had known or you had learned her close connection with Ra. Like, was that in your awareness when you were at the beginning stages of connecting with her?
I remember reading her story of like she had been Ra had hired her to validate the human design system. And I
Mm.
think that is what I was curious about. There was something that was always off for me. Like I almost ditched design several times. I was sure I was joining Scientology in the beginning,
Ah.
between Richard Beaumont's videos with the clip art and stuff, and the age of it and the swirling kind of Doctor Who, like he's added his own style to it. I was never a fan of Doctor Who, so to me it was kind of just had this Doctor Who-y thing going on, and then I thought I was joining Scientology, and I was like almost out. I was almost out, and had it not been for a reading I had with a woman whose name I can't remember, that it was just I paid for another reading. I was just like I need, because I was collecting readings like candy too. I've had like a dozen, right? Like I was looking for patterns of what people were telling me versus, and I know now it's because I didn't really trust anybody, like almost like a psychic reader that could read your your interaction, be like, oh, I'm on to something, and so they keep going down that.
Ah.
So I kind of like that I had a dozen reference points.
Mm.
So it was like, okay, this is consistent across all these people. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah. So this woman, um, she was awesome because she was using Karen Curry Parker's system, and I didn't know what quantum human design was at the time. All I know is she was calling me a time bender, and I was like, I want to take that out for a spin, right? Like that's all I heard was time bender, and I was like, sounds good to me, like a kid wanting to be Batman or Superman. And then she also had created her own PowerPoint deck talking about my design, and she was laughing at her own choices of clip art. So she was like highly entertaining because I was out. I was like so close, I think, at the time of being like too weird for me. But thank goodness this other energy appeared that wasn't Ra's human design. It wasn't
Ah.
the, you're all dummies and you're all sheep and I'm a wolf, and like it never vibed with me. Grateful for the channel, great for all of it,
Mhm.
but it wasn't the right frequency for me. So I think I was looking for more, and then I found Eleanor, um, and then we had a bunch of conversations, and I don't know how it evolved. It'd be interesting to look back at that, but I feel like we were only connecting for about 4 or 5 weeks when I said, "Hey, would you want to do a podcast with me?" And I
Mm.
remember it's one of the few times that I haven't procrastinated something to death. I just whipped open Chat GPT. I was like, I want to do this thing with this woman. and I want to present it in such a way that it's a business case and give her, this is my recommendation. Here's two other ways we can go. Because I knew her time, it's not time is money. Although, funny enough, I had a conversation with a friend that used to say, if time is money, stop wasting my money, right? Like my time. So anyway, that's a whole different thing. But like Eleanor values her energy and her time. And I just knew I had to pitch it to her like she was a business person.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked on our podcast yesterday again about how when she met Ron, everybody at the time, everyone was there were a bunch of hippies in jeans. She was the only person that showed up, wearing a business suit. And that's why she has the copyright for the body graph, which she's said yesterday she's going to go find and like present, because it's like, stop it already. If we're going to do this, like, it's not like she went and got the copyright because she was trying to screw anyone over at the time. She was going into business with Ra under an intention that he didn't honor. And so she has the copyright. So like, if we're going to get legal on all this stuff, it sounds like she's going to present it. Anyways.
So you chat GPT'd a proposal, come on my podcast. Would you like to?
Well, no, we're going to create. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't come on my podcast. We're going to do a podcast together. But I'll make it easy. Like, I'm going to use my Restream. All you have to do is show up on Fridays and we'll have a chat. So we did that. And, she prefers Zoom. So like, I would rather just use Restream. She's on a Mac. She's got 1,000 windows open. She's got a lot of things going on. She wants to use Zoom. We'll just embed Zoom, etc. So like, there's little technical things that just accommodated, and off we go. And then we've done a bunch ever since. And it's strange, dude. Like, I think my YouTube channel has 370 subscribers. Like, it's not a lot. I think I gain one a week or two a week, but I get the nicest notes from all these people on these side channels saying, like, thank you for talking to Eleanor. Thank you for having these with Eleanor. So I know it's worth it. So yeah. So I'm just gonna keep doing it until Eleanor says she doesn't want to do it anymore. So.
Well, and I'm curious because there's a piece of the puzzle that I'm not hearing you speak to, and that's the entry point for me of Dr. Eleanor being a part of the Human Design Conference this past September. Like, were that not to be the case, I don't know that I would have bumped into her via you.
Yeah, and I don't know the precise timing about that. In my memory, there was a bunch of overlap, and it'd be interesting to look back because it almost seemed like it needed to happen. Like there's just a lot of things shifting. But right around the same time that Jonah had done a podcast with Chaitan, it was like, well, I got to talk to that dude as well. So I did, and we kind of had this overlap where all of a sudden Chaitan and Eleanor, and there's a backstory there. They knew each other, right? And they, it's sort of this other group of people that were there and then broke from Ra, because that's what happened. There's a ton of people that broke from Ra. Richard Rudd broke from Ra. It doesn't sound like he was a lot of fun to work with at times. Despite amazing knowledge and sharing it as it was a gift. It doesn't sound like it was always a lot of fun. So, So Jonah had Chaitan on, and I had Eleanor, and then I had Chaitan, and he had Eleanor. And I think that's where she then got connected to the conference, which that's where she would have been on your radar because you were already helping with creating the lanyards or whatever, right? Is that what you call it? Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Around our necks.
Yeah. Assembling the charts for attendees so that they're available electronically. And then also, as people are moving about the conference, they've got them in print form. But yeah, what Jonah had put out a message just generally of that he'd like to see who would volunteer to interview presenters for the conference. And I knew for myself that, I've had a history of having podcasts and was curious, do I want to get back into doing that? And have been holding that question for a number of years. and human design has been such a focus for me. And it's interesting when I look at the people that I decided or I felt a ping to interview, I thought, or I see a similarity around spirituality as the theme. People who
Mm.
are engaging with human design and mm, inviting or holding human design as an element of spirituality. And so those were the people that I wanted to interview. And so because of doing the behind the scenes work of, having everybody's birth data and then doing the lanyards and the electronic version of the charts, Jonah connected me with Dr. Eleanor saying, she'd like people to have her version or her noble energy maps, the four worlds. Could I help facilitate her having the birth data? And then it just kind of grew from there. She said, well, do you want to have a meeting so that you kind of understand what it is that you're looking at? And then I didn't know, but that turned into her giving me a reading. And then I was like, what just happened? And where human design was doing this as information for me, her four worlds or her eight maps just expanded the view so much. And the fact that it's four worlds and one of those worlds of spirituality, even I think the emotional world, emotional slash angelic, to me feels spiritual as well. And to me, I think of spirituality as like looking inward and seeing what more information is available outside of the tangible. Um, so it just kind of evolved. And then I was like, who's this Sean dude? Like I knew you from the last conference, but I hadn't ever fully dove into your podcasts. And so that was kind of that convergence for me. And then here we've been in class a number of months together and, developing this
Oh,
friendship and,
yeah.
collaborating the way we are. What's that?
Just do a sidebar like every other day lately. It's lovely. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I remember when Jonah had shown up because I think you reached out something to do with Eleanor's work. And then I hadn't quite connected the dots, but then all of a sudden there was a picture of Jonah in his house and you
Mm.
were in the I was like, oh wow, you live in Santa Fe. Like you were like I somehow that's when the dots connected in this. And
Hmm.
yeah, we've connected ever since.
Hmm.
Yeah. The Eleanor's stuff on the surface seems more complex because it's, nine imprints and but like, she can explain it all. I can't recall it all, but like everything makes sense. Um, but I find it's simpler because it's less about labeling and more about where energy flows.
Hmm.
And it's spacious. Like there's four worlds and it quite literally is. I feel like when I'm playing pickleball, if
Mm.
I plant my legs like Orion's shown us, and I like all of a sudden I'm like rooted in my feet and I'm breathing and I'm like I am here and I'm complete and I'm enough. It's that's all I needed. And so like when Eleanor keeps hammering home, and I'm absolutely with her at this point. And to your point earlier from the 2343, like we are all the body graph.
Hmm.
And so I'm finding it, even at the last conference, I found myself like just inside my head being like, stop talking about design, everybody. Stop talking about what gate you have. And, or, I'm ordering the mochaccino because I'm a projector with, like, it's still like, really, that's why you're ordering this particular drink is because you're design. But I'm doing it all the time still. Like I do it with Eleanor, and the number of times that I'll be like, oh, what is it? Like, why am I stubborn about this? Or why am I doing this? And her reason often has nothing to do with design. Like, why is it that I can't maintain focus with people? She's like, well, you have audio sequencing issues. So like in her kitchen, and she's telling me this, and it was like, and then started looking into audio acoustic.
Sequencing.
Yeah. And it's the idea that like if I just miss something from before, I'm out of context. Now I feel shame that I missed it. I don't want to ask questions. Old me. Now I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Which means sometimes I have to interrupt people right in the middle. Like, you just said a word that I've heard and I don't know what it means. So we need to stop and investigate that word for a second. I used to just shrug and be like, yeah, I think I'm going to guess what you meant. And then that wasn't good, right? Because the result wasn't correct. So,
Well, and this is an interesting thread that I'm picking up as you're going to this topic is, there's in conversation with Dr. Eleanor, we're not going to talk about things basically that she hasn't proven, right? And so profile, circuitry, and substructure. And you and I have had conversations about in traditional human design, we're quad left in the mental world. And so what you just spoke about is something that I've tracked in myself. Is if I miss a part of the thread, it's like systems aren't working, synapses aren't coming together. And using your phrasing, the old me would be like, I get it. I'm smart. So whatever my story is that says just go along. I was having a conversation with Topher today and he used a term and he was like, well, and I was like, I don't know. And I can nod along. And if you want me in the conversation, which I believe you do, could you help catch me up? Could you bring me into the world that you're speaking of?
But just as you said that, like, it's so powerful to say you don't understand. Like, Topher's a really smart dude. And so when he used a phrase, he wouldn't have used it had he not known what it meant.
Yep.
You know how many people I run into that use phrases and they don't know what it means? And they
Right.
right? It's almost like NLP, like blah, 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 blah. Uh-huh. And they do the nod thing. And then you're like, oh yeah. And then before you know it, you're all fucked because no one knows what anyone's talking about.
Well,
So,
now what's NLP?
oh, sorry, neuro-linguistic programming. So it's a form of hypnosis that was
Oh.
its intention was good. Its intention was getting the other person to relax, usually matching their breathing. Like, it's actually taught in NLP. Like, if I was talking to you and you're a woman, I actually want to see your breath because I want to match your breathing so that we'll be in sync with each other. You'll relax and then you'll be able to share and you'll be able to let go of things.
Mm.
However, a male looking at a woman and looking at her chest is generally triggering. So there's that. But also NLP, its intention, at least from what I understand, was helping people work through things. It became a very effective sales technique, right? Who's the big guy, dark hair?
Tony Robbins.
Like, he uses NLP. Bill Clinton, like, when he's doing this, like, these are all like these are techniques that salespeople have learned to manipulate people, politicians particularly, but also salespeople. So NLP got bastardized and became a manipulation tool.
Mm.
It is a form of hypnosis. Anyway, how did we get on NLP? Because I probably should close that loop. But oh yeah. Just the fact that, like, someone could use some bullshit term and if they're not wrong, that's a fact. Even if they don't know they're doing NLP, it's kind of like we all agree, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a good idea, right? Like, it's actually fascinating when you watch there's a guy on YouTube, I can't remember his name, he's covered in tattoos and he analyzes people's speeches. And like, one was Ellen DeGeneres, and he was talking about her apology from something from years ago. And he slow down the video and be like, she's saying, like, I'm really sorry about, but what she's doing, she's going, I'm really sorry about this thing that happened. And he's like, gotcha. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, body is showing that you're just going through the motions. And whether that's an internal, like, I feel like my body won't let me lie, even though my mouth will, or my mind. So anyways, it's a fascinating world that I've gone down, like, analyzing people's eye movements. If you're looking up to the right, some people say you're lying. That's not necessarily true. It is, you are inventing something. So it's great for, I imagine a world like this. But if you're looking up to the left, you're recalling. So
Hmm.
people just be like, oh, if you're imagining, you used to ask someone like, did you do the dishes last night? And they look to the right. Ah, you're lying. You're about to say, yeah, I did. Well, that's not necessarily true, but there is some truth to that stuff. And I've been finding myself like fascinated. Anyway, I don't know how I got on that. That's a whole other thing that interests me. I find myself like studying people. And again, I think it comes back to the human design thing of,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe it's time to let that go. Like I feel pretty solid about me lately. But in the past, it was like I had come to the point where I didn't trust anyone,
Yeah.
including myself. So
Well, and the thread about, maybe why people come to human design. I heard you say I don't remember how you said it, but something about the other person, wanting to, and you said it earlier about that maybe some of the communication that's out there is this is what's wrong with you through human design, as opposed to wanting to feel empowered through human design.
well, because human design is full of labels. This is your
Mm.
profile, this is your type, this is your strategy, this is your color, this is your tone, this is, they're labels. That's what the government does too, to all of us everywhere. I mean, the reason there's a neurodivergence is that it's like, you fuckers, you won't stand still. So we're just trying to like staple, let's control the people that think differently than
Mm.
those of us that concur.
Mm.
It's what's broken right now. So, and unfortunately, human design does the same thing, I think. And that's what's
Mm.
kind of freeing is, and I still get caught up in it all the time. I mean, I can nerd out with anybody in a human design gate thing and enjoy. I still don't know what I'm talking about, but I can enjoy the process. But I recognize it's not always beneficial for sure.
Mhm.
Just get caught in that mental soup.
Yeah. I guess the long way of saying that similarly, I was starting to track for myself that I didn't like how it was feeling that I would get somebody's chart and then I would feel like I knew who they were.
Mhm.
I don't throw it all out. There are parts of it that, still resonate. It's kind of here's how I started into this world. And I don't know, will I give um noble energy or four worlds readings for people? Maybe. I don't know the trajectory. And what feels good to me is how can we help? How can the conversation support people loving themselves more?
How
So,
can people move energy? Eleanor
sorry.
has said a few Eleanor said a few times to me, and I don't think it's been in a podcast, so I'll say it here. Like she's actually encouraged me not to be a reader. And or like Chaitan said, like a human design analyst has the word anal in it. Like just stop already, right? Like there's just nothing useful about that. So, if we're gonna help people move energy, I want to be an energy strategist. And then there's all sorts of exciting ways to work with people. What's the environment you're in? Who are the people you're with? What are they going to be? Eleanor and I keep playing with different words because we talk about like conditioning and deconditioning is not necessarily a thing, and definition, maybe not. Maybe it's nuance. Maybe it's your thematic. So I'm pretty sure. And I was talking. I think it was yesterday. Naomi and I were kind of riffing on it as well. I think I'm going to stop talking about human design. It's going to be energy maps. Like it's still the same thing. Human design is a trademark, it's a brand, it's a commercial entity. And if cross planning is really going to go, that's, you can already see what's going on with Jovi and other stuff where they're just falling under the weight of the same theme.
Mm.
But like, it's all energy maps. So my current favorite energy map is Noble energy maps. And I
Mhm.
do like it's funny, but like she's been preparing for this for like in a way 20 years. And for some
Mhm.
reason it's been not on everyone's radar and is starting to make inroads. Oh, where was I going with that? Oh, just the fact that she called it Beyond Human Design. And that
I
wasn't
know.
like 6 months. Like, right? Like it's almost like, when she talks about God's hand or, getting an intuition, like it was ahead of where we are. Yeah, it's all very interesting. It's all super synchronistic too, right? Like I honestly have no idea why I'm the person that gets to talk to her every week. You know,
Hmm.
Mikhail said in a conversation, and at the time, I remember thinking like, "Whew, 6 months earlier," and I would have been like, "That hurt." But Vicky was like, it's like, why do you think you're with this highly accomplished, experienced, certified woman? Like, how is it you? And I was like, whoa, wait a second. Like, it's not like I've done stuff. It may not be in this. I'm new to this space, but I'm not. I've got some skills and some experience. And then she felt so terrible at first because she like when I echoed it back, it's like, oh, that's not what she meant, and I knew
Hmm.
that's not what she meant. But the words she said, heard 6 months earlier, I would have been like, well, when this call wraps up, we'll see who connects with who, you know.
Yeah.
So, um, hmm,
Yeah,
I
and
lost.
you and I have said, that something about feeling like we're on the ground floor,
Mhm.
of Dr. Eleanor's information reaching more people. And
I
yeah.
feel privileged or lucky or I'm supposed to be. I mean, that's the only thing. Like every week, I'm like, I don't know what my plan is for the week, other than class on Wednesday, webinar Thursday, podcast Friday.
Hmm.
And the rest of the week is pickleball, and if I can play my drums, and trying to figure out who I want to be when I grow up. So,
Hmm.
so yeah, yeah. I do believe for sure in fractals. I
Hmm.
believe. Uh, yeah, I want to say this, and I'm sure Eleanor will hear this too, potentially. So she calls them patterns of orientation instead of incarnation cross.
Yep.
But without a doubt, I feel like I'm at least um, executing my incarnation cross. Like
Mm.
O'Reilly had said, which I really appreciated, was um, you don't try to be your incarnation cross. You're when you're living your in when the cross is there, you're getting things right. And my approach was, okay, well, drill in on my four gates. That was my approach. I zeroed in the cross. So 13, 7, 1, and 2. And what does that mean? And I'm going to just embody that for a while. And sure enough, that's really, I think, around the time I met Eleanor.
Mm.
And my Rax or right angle across the Sphinx 1 or whatever says, I'm here to be intuitive about the past to create shortcuts for the rest of us in the future. Well, I think I was intuitive to go like, this raw thing it's close, but it's not right. There's
Hmm.
something off. And so I didn't find Eleanor. She was already there. But something about us two connecting has, I don't know, a couple things have moved along, right? So then I can sit there and be like, oh shit, have I lived out my incarnation cross? Am I about to like, am I done? I've done my job for this incarnation.
Mm.
Like I don't know. You can take things quite figuratively and literally, but
Hmm.
yeah. So now I'm excited about patterns of orientation because I've already figured out the incarnation cross. Now I need to get it to the
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
and then with Dr. Eleanor's eight maps or nine, for sure eight in this context, what I'm about to say now is there are potentially eight different ones. And
Eight different.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know what yours are?
Hmm. I think
Because
that's part of what cracked my mind when she was introducing or showing me my chart or my body map, my energy maps. Yeah, it's explanation, the four ways, and then
is
defiance.
that your incarnation cross already? Was X 4 days? Yeah. Okay. And then so
Uh,
what's the other?
explanation, the four ways, defiance, and alpha.
Oh, so you have four different. That's interesting because I only have two. And so I, so new that I don't really know. Like, is that normal to have two? Is it normal to have four?
Yeah.
No, I think Charles, her son, is adding the patterns of orientation back into this software because her previous software had it. Mine is Sphinx and Maya. And
Mm-hmm.
so I say, like, what does Maya even mean? And from what I understand, Maya is energy, it's dark matter, it's prana, it's chi. And sure enough, like I've only learned that Maya is part of my pattern of orientation in the last 3 months. For the last 6 months, I have been like invested in chi, becoming Reiki initiated, attending Orion stuff, and having a like profound awakening to the value of just taking care of my body and being in the
Mm.
energy. So,
Can I
I mean,
show your chart?
sure, yeah, it's like another layer that is resonating, but I wouldn't have known about it had I not been intuitive about I didn't find Eleanor. You know what I mean? But something's happened where like we're in each other's orbit. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is her old chart or her old program, before Charles upgraded it or however we would speak to that. So this first um so the way the chart is this is the top left is mental, top right is spiritual, bottom left emotional, bottom right is physical. And then similar to the opposite side. So it's prenatal, before leaving the womb, and then postnatal, post leaving the womb. And so in the um, previous version of her programs, it looked like this, and it included. Why can't I? Here we go. Yeah. So your mental world before leaving the body was Sphinx, and then spiritual Maya, and then Sphinx again, emotional, and then Maya again, for physical. And then outside the body.
and this is where I spoke out of turn. I didn't notice the changing pattern of cycles, but part of me is like, I just get excited about something. I probably saw the first page and was like, look, there's a theme, go. And then so here we are circling back.
Well, and the other piece that I'm really curious to hear or learn about is see how it says the foundation versus the changing pattern versus the transitional pattern. So there's something about that languaging that I'm interested to learn, because in your out of the body or postnatal emotional, it's listening. So
Well, that's been the biggest thing I've learned. And it's my personality son. Like I'm 13.3, listening with
mm-hmm.
this. And I would say, and like listening with pessimism is Ra's words. And it's kind of again where I come back to, I don't like those words. Listening with pessimism is negative. I the word playfulness or playful is all I feel lately. And I want to, because it's more optimistic. It's more, I don't want to listen to people with pessimism. I want to believe in the best for them. So it's shifted that too. The listening thing has been, and again, go back to that men's weekend and a bunch of us doing LSD and being in a circle. I can remember the moment I realized I was such a shitty listener. Like I was in this circle, there was like 15 men. Everyone is doing their share after 2 days of intense stuff, right? Like you do 2 tabs of acid, like stuff moves. so so everyone's sharing. And I realized by about the eighth dude that was sharing that I didn't hear anything. And it was because with each person, I heard them share an issue, a concern, something, and I had an answer for them. And so I was like, I got to remember to tell him this. I got to tell this guy about this website, or have you heard? And so and I think it's my big old open heart, but I was this worthiness of like, I need to give value to every single person there, but I was giving nobody value because I didn't hear half of what they talked about because I was repeating in my mind, got to tell this guy this, got to tell that guy that. And something like by what the eighth guy, and part of it's like I'm going to speak like I was like 12. So in my mind, I'm like, I got 4 more guys to listen to, and then I'm going to speak, and I don't want to speak, right? Like I'm just going to say as little as possible, but I wanted to add value to everyone, like some sort of like need. And then I realized I wasn't listening, and then I realized I need to listen with my heart, and that was a different sensation. Now, because if you listen with your heart, like you need to shut up. So I just was like, and all of a sudden it became a better listener. And I get a lot of comments lately when I'm interviewing people that like people are so amazed at how I just am quiet, even though I feel like I'm interrupting people all the time. Other people comment like, "I'm surprised you didn't chime in. I'm surprised you didn't jump in." And it is, I have learned to, the other person is the most interesting person in the world at that point. And I learn. And the gift for me, I've realized with that 13 is, even if it's agonizing, because if it's the 20th time I've heard it, it's like I know this story, but there's always something for me. There's always some little nugget. There's always something that the person will impart that is like the next thing I needed to hear, which comes full circle to, I used to worry about finishing my learnings, and now I realize I get the lessons and learnings real time. And that has been a theme in my life that I can reflect back on and be like, holy cow, I'm not supposed to know what I'm to do tomorrow, but for some reason the information I need will be there. To trust that. And I used to experience that in computers and IT, where I for some reason I was on YouTube checking out some thing, and sure enough, the next day in a meeting they were asking about it. They'd be like, "You know about this?" And in the back of my mind, I'm like, "Yeah, I looked last night. That was weird." But like I've had 1,000 of those moments that are starting to be like, "Oh no, that's how it works for me." Still learning to trust that. And it is that listener thing. I need to relax, listen. The hard part of that is people trauma dump on me. I had no idea they were doing, oh, this guy will listen. He'll hear my story. Like empath vacuum for people's trauma. And when I didn't have an energy management regime, because I had no idea that was a thing, and now without a doubt it's a thing, that's what's making it so I can hear, because otherwise I'm just storing it, and I'm just overwhelmed and exhausted from everyone's shit. So yeah, it's like even today, it's nice. I'm sitting here feeling bad that I'm talking the whole time, because usually I don't feel like I get to be heard. Because most people are telling me about their stuff. So it's it's very nice actually. And it's nice because I'm hearing myself speak it. It's almost like I'm teaching. Like I'm not teaching you anything. I'm not teaching anyone anything. But I'm hearing myself saying, going, "Oh yeah, that clocks for me now." Like I can, staple that. That. So it's good.
I'm glad to hear that. Well, for all the people who are now knowing Dr. Eleanor because of your following what you followed, thank you.
Yeah, as I say, I'm not driving this thing as far as that goes. I drove the car up island to that weekend. As I say, when I first interacted with Dr. Eleanor, it was this weird, confusing thing, and I first stuck through it. And I can't explain why, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Well, friend, thank you for
tapped out. I know that feeling. We've had enough chats where you can feel like, oof, let's just let that go a bit. So.
Yeah, no, it feels like a gentleness of landing, and yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. That was fun.